We will begin with the usual recitation. Dala thangwa jebe dra nopar jebe ge tarba dan tam je gembe bardu jobra jeba tam je gi su jebe ma nang ka dang nyampe sen chen tam je dewa tang den tung ya tang zhe nir du la na me pa yang Dabra sobe chanchu rinpo je topar jo Dala thangwa jebe dra nopar jebe ge tarpa dang tam je kempe bardu jobra jeba tam je gi su jebe ma nang ka dang nyampe sen chen tam je dewa tang den tum ya tang zhe nir du la na me pa yang Dabra sobe chanchu rinpo je topar jo Dala thangwa jebe dra nopar jebe ge tarpa dang tam je kempe bardu jobra jeba tam je gi su jebe ma nang ka dang nyampe sen chen tam je dewa tang den tung ya tang zhe nir du la na me pa yang Dabra sobe chanchu rinpo je topar jo de je du sama ge ki bardu longa yisum ge wala ku ma shi bardu longa yisum ge wala ku du tiring ne sung te ne ma san tha sam ki bardu longa yisum ge wala ku Jodan sogi jonam la chancho bardu dane gyamsu je dage junsu gebe sonang ke drola pencher sanje drobra shu sanje jodan sogi jonam la chancho bardu dane gyamsu je dage junsu gebe sonang ke Drola penche sanje drupra shu sanje jodan soge jonam la chanchu bardu dane kyamsu je dhage jinsu gebe sonang ke Drola penche sanje drupra shu manang kadam nyampe senchen tamche dewa dang Dewe kindan tempra gyurji, dunya dan dunya ji, gyudan drava gyurji, dunya mepe deva dhamme drava gyurji, nerin chadan nidan drava, yang la nebra gyurji, manang kadang nyampe senchen tamji, deva dang, dewe kindan tempra gyurji, dunya dan dunya ji, Gyudan drava gyurji, dunya mepe deva dhamme drava gyurji, niring chadan nidang drava tanyam la nebra gyurji, manang kadang nyampe senchen tamche deva dang, dewe gyudan tempra gyurji, dunya dang dunya gi, gyudan drava gyurji, Dunga mepe deva dhamme drava gyurji, nirin chadan nidan drava tanyam la nebra gyurji. Let us now do the 7-branch puja, the 7-branch worship. We will do this in the different languages. So in the interpretation room, Spanish and Chinese, and then in the main room, we are going to do this in English. In all the worlds of the 10 directions reside Tathagatas of the 3 times. Before each of you lions among humans, I prostrate joyfully with body, speech, and mind. By the power of this aspiration to noble deeds, all conquerors appear vividly in my mind. With as many bodies as there are atoms in all lands, I prostrate to all you conquerors. In each atom are Buddhas numberless as atoms, all in the midst of the heirs of the Buddhas. Thus I conceive of this Dharma Dhatu as completely filled with you conquerors in this way. With infinite oceans of praise and oceans of diverse melodies, I sing the excellent qualities of all you conquerors and praise all of you gone to bliss. With the best flowers and best garlands, best music, ointments, and excellent parasols, finest lamps and superior incense, I offer to you conquerors. With excellent garments and best fragrances, and sandalwood powder heaped high as Mount Meru, all wondrous offerings perfectly arranged I offer to you conquerors. These vast and unequal offerings to each and every one of you conquerors, with the power of conviction in noble deeds, I prostrate and offer to all you conquerors. All the harmful deeds that I have done with my body, speech, and mind, under the power of desire, hatred, and ignorance, I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in all the meritorious deeds of all conquerors in the 10 directions and the heirs of the Buddhas, solitary realizers, hearers still in training and beyond, and all wandering beings. You who are lambs of the worlds of the 10 directions, who have unobstructedly attained Buddhahood through the stages of Bodhi, all you who are my protectors, please turn the unexhaled wheel of Dharma. With palms together, I earnestly beseech you who may intend to manifest final nirvana, please remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the world, for the happiness and well-being of all wandering beings. Whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. So good morning and good evening to everyone. So it is a good thing to do for us to familiarize ourselves with these 7 branches or the 7 elements of this basic 7-fold puja, 7-branch puja. This is not just, something to be recited, something to be chanted, but more importantly, the chanting, the recitation is to remind ourselves to actually practice these 7 branches. Furthermore, though something like this is sometimes called ngondro, meaning that which goes before, the main thing, but they are not just something that goes before, as in you do and then you can forget. They are something that goes before, ngondro. They are something that, so ngun is like in front or before. And then dro is to go, ngondro. So what goes before is the foundation. Like when you are building any building, first you have to build a good foundation. So these 7 branches are the foundation for generating bodhicitta. Specifically, they are the ngondro for generating bodhicitta. So Ngondro is not just, 100,000 this, 100,000 that. In fact, those are just superficial aspects of Ngondro. There is no guarantee that after 100,000 of this or 100,000 of that, that the foundation is there. It is also not a requirement that unless you have 100,000 this or 100,000 that, you do not have a foundation. Then you could say that an even more basic foundation, so at this we're talking about perhaps even pre-Dharma, pre-Buddhist in a way, a pre-Dharma, pre-Buddhist foundation, Ngondro, for the generation of bodhicitta and the practice of bodhicitta is the presence of a good heart. Just common decency, common decency, a common mind or attitude of not wanting to harm others, not wanting to take advantage of others, being considerate to others, just very ordinary but very necessary basic good heart. First we need to have that, we need to appreciate that, before we even talk about anything else. And when we have that, then we can, upon that, we can shape the foundation through the 7 branches. And then upon the foundation of the 7 branches, then we can proceed to generate bodhicitta, to give rise. Generate means to give rise to bodhicitta. And then to engage in the practices that comes with after bodhicitta has been aroused or given rise. So we are now in the midst of chapter 3 of Bodhicharyavatara, the chapter that is the taking of this Bodhisattva vow, or the formal ceremony, the formality of giving rise to bodhicitta in the presence of a preceptor. All of chapter 2 and the beginning part of chapter 3 basically teaches the 7 branches. Then from stanza 11, verse 11 of Bodhicharyavatara, of chapter 3, I mean, from verse 11 onwards until 22, this is a general overview on how we have to change and train and change our mind. So how to engage in training the mind, changing the mind. In Tibetan, it's called lojong. So, verse 11 is a summary on how to do this mind training. The surface level, on the surface level, verse 11 seems to be talking about giving and generosity, the first of the 6 paramitas. So the 3 domains are mentioned, right? My body, which is the most immediate object of grasping, and then what I own, the stuff that I have, and then in a broader, more subtle way, the non-material things that I have, my merit, my reputation, my self-esteem, my confidence, all these things. All 3 domains, it says, I give them all without considering the consequences, so as to bring benefit to all beings. That means I'm dedicating all of this. It doesn't mean throw these things away. It means I'm putting all these 3 domains towards the goal of bringing benefit to all beings. Right now, of course, frankly speaking, it's hard to imagine actually doing this. I mean, no one is even asking us to miss a couple of meals so that you can say, make offerings to receive teachings, No one is even asking us to do that. But even just the thought that I have to give something to receive teachings, oh, no, I don't know. This is, too much. So how much more, like giving with no strings attached, that kind of giving, and for the purpose of benefiting beings. To truly do that, it's not easy. And sometimes when we have everything, more or less, we have everything that reasonably that you could want to have, and then it's also easy to not think that, oh, I'm not that attached, to think that, oh, I'm not that attached. But if we really look into it, I think that attachment is still very strong. And so we have all kinds of excuses why we cannot give. Oh, because of this, oh, because of that, then up until, oh, because my grandkids need it. My pets need it. My first responsibility is to them. So on the surface, verse 11 is talking about giving. But when you actually look deeper, it is actually also talking about the sixth perfection, the perfection of wisdom. Because what this perfection of giving or perfection of generosity is really training us to give up self-grasping. Fixating on I, me, and mine lies at the root of samsara. And so only with wisdom, with true wisdom, can we see that this I, and then by extension what I consider to be me and what I consider to be mine, all these things, through true wisdom, through perfection of wisdom, we can see that this is all temporarily existing fixation that keeps us tied up and therefore no freedom. And if we want freedom from suffering, we have to relinquish. We have to let go of this fixation. And so, from the first paramita, the paramita of giving, to the paramita of wisdom, all of it is to counteract self-grasping, more directly and indirectly, but all of it, in other words, all the six paramitas, the main practices of the Bodhisattva path, is about relinquishing self-grasping. So verse 12 says, the final goal of nirvana, how is that attained? Is attained by giving all. Right? So giving all, what this all is referring to is, if you distill it to one point, giving up self-grasping. When you expand it, then it's giving all sorts of things. All sorts of things that under the category of I, me, mine. All of that has to be given. Why? Because as long as we are still holding on to them, identifying with them, then if you insist on staying in prison, nobody can free you. Even if there are golden chains, even if your prison is made out of gold, it's in the end prison. If you insist on staying in there, meaning not giving them up, then how can you be free? How can nirvana be achieved? Not possible. It says, and all, at least in the English translation, hopefully also in the Spanish and Chinese, it says, all must be surrendered. All of this that we grasp onto, I, me, mine, must be surrendered in a single instant. Therefore, it is best to give them to others now. So what we can understand from that is also a reminder, You don't know when that single instant comes. What is that single instant? The moment of death. In that moment of death, when death arrives, all of it will be yanked away from you. Better than to wait until then, because at that point it will be unimaginably painful and unbearable. That all of this will be snatched away from you. Now, while you have them, you give them up. Again, give them up doesn't mean throwing them away. It means not be chained by them. So the things that we can give, we give. And the people around us, what do we give them? We give them freedom. Freedom from our expectations, freedom from our control, freedom from our grasping. It doesn't mean throw away your family. It doesn't mean, renounce your friends. don't burden others with our expectations of them. Actually, we're not doing that even out of, some kind of like heroic move. We do our best not to burden others with our expectations because, in a way, it is you could say out of an understanding of how that in fact protects us ourselves from suffering. So in the end, seeking to protect ourselves from suffering will also protect others from suffering. Because when we burden others with our expectations, that means we are also burdening ourselves. In fact, it's double burden. The burden that you have placed on someone else, and then the burden of that someone else meeting or not meeting your expectations. So you carry double burden, the other person carry one load of burden. When in fact, a lot of times we cannot even live up to our own expectations. How much less can we expect somebody else to live up to the expectations that we have put onto them? So it's best to develop having no expectations on others. Don't burden them because it causes them suffering. It causes us even more suffering. We don't need to be disappointed with others. We don't need to be disappointed with ourselves in this way. And not in a way that is forced. We have to develop this understanding so that, it becomes quite naturally that our happiness is no longer in other people's hands. And you cannot do this because you have been disappointed too many times. Then out of spite, you say, I'm going to be emotionally unresponsive, unavailable. I'm going to shut down. That is not the practice that we're talking about here. Here, the practice really is something that we grow and develop over time, seeing how our up until now confused ways of being in the world can only lead to more suffering and disappointment for self and others. Then we develop genuine understanding. So when genuine understanding arises, then quite naturally, we learn how to be happy when friends are friendly. But when friends are not friendly for whatever reason, we are not disturbed by it. We understand that, everyone's samsara is so complicated. And leave it alone. When family are being familial, close, behaving like what the world says family should behave, we are glad, we are happy. But when family, don't behave like family, we can practice to a point where we are also, oh, well, what to say, I cannot even guarantee that my mind will go this way or that way. Then how much more unreasonable to expect other people's mind, other people's heart to go according to my plan. My mind, my emotions won't even go according to my plan. And then we expect other people's mind, other people's emotions to go according to my plan. Give that up. Now, not having expectations sometimes can sound like, you don't care. No. This is not about don't care. You're not training to become cold and distant. No. Elsewhere, Buddha also taught, and later here in Shantideva also teaches how to be warm, to be kind, to be helpful, to have genuine care. And here, not having expectations is saying, don't be stupid. Give up acting in a foolish way. And develop skill in relation to our emotions, our expectations, our fears, and our hopes. Yeah, so verses 13 to 17 is, we covered that. We talked about how even though some parts of that sounds as if harming a bodhisattva can bring good to someone, it's not talking about that. It's talking about an aspiring bodhisattva. A bodhisattva should train themselves to have such a big and such a big heart that even when they are being abused, falsely accused, mistreated by others, still in their hearts they think that, oh, may this person now hurling abuses at me, may they be free from suffering. And so this is talking about a bodhisattva's mind, heart, needs to train until that is a spontaneous reaction to other people causing harm to them. Especially Kyobaji Densumgun, he says, like we should not have an understanding of karma that is that we should not have an understanding of karma that somehow because someone's motivation is so pure that doing actions that cause harm can actually bring good. It says that is just, you're confusing two different issues. Having a pure motivation, having, right view and all of that, that's one set of issues. Insofar as actions that cause harm, then the result is always harm. So forget about, thinking, harming bodhisattvas can somehow bring, positive results. Harming any being, much less bodhisattvas, harming any being always brings negative results. So we should be careful with the idea, like the ends justify the means. Actually, Kyoba Rinpoche says, no, you pay attention to your means. Because a lot of times when you think the ends can justify the means, then chances are the means, like your actions, are going to move in the direction of non-virtue. And if you move in the direction of non-virtue, he says, even an 8th level bodhisattva, which ordinarily we say can no longer do any wrong. But he says, if your actions, you're not careful, you don't pay attention to your actions of body, speech, and mind, and you think, oh, my motivation is pure. See, it's very easy to fool yourself and say, oh, my motivation is pure. And then not pay attention to our actions. These actions can easily lead us into suffering. So he says, pay attention to those actions. So verses 13 to 17, in a nutshell, is teaching us what Jesus taught. Actually, he says, turn the other cheek. Yeah? Well, meaning when people hit you on one side, instead of retaliating to hit them, you have to be willing to even turn the other side for them to hit, instead of retaliating. Or as we read in the Dhammapada and other places, anger can never be overcome by anger, but only through love can we overcome anger. So now verses 18 to 22 is the dedicating, reminding us how to dedicate our practice of lojong, of training the mind, changing our attitude, that we need to dedicate this training towards the following goals, so to say. So let's read this together in the different languages in our different rooms. May I be a guard for those who are protectorless, a guide for those who journey on the road. For those who wish to cross waters, may I be a boat, a raft, a bridge. May I be an owl for those who yearn for land, a lamp for those who long for light, for all who need a resting place, a bed. For those who need a servant, may I be their slave. May I be the wishing jewel, the vase of wealth, a word of power and the supreme healing. May I be the tree of miracles for every being, the abundant cow. Just like the earth and space itself and all the other mighty elements for boundless multitudes of beings, may I always be the ground of life, the source of varied sustenance. Thus, for everything that lives, as far as are the limits of the sky, may I be constantly their source of livelihood until they pass beyond all sorrow. So verses 18 to 22 expresses, in a way, it gives you some concrete images, like, okay, you say you want to train your mind. You want to train your mind to give up self-grasping, to overcome the fault of self-grasping. You want to train your mind so that you are able to give without regard, without holding back. Now, how do we know? How is this actually seen? In a way, 18 to 22 this is how it is seen. How it is seen, how it can play out is that you will be a guard for those who are protectorless. For those who journey on the road, who are traveling, who are going to places, you will show them the way. For those who are caught in water, you will be aboard a raft and a bridge. So here, in this 5 verses of dedication, it gives us some very concrete images. That is not just, oh, may all beings be free from suffering. Oh, may I become Buddha to liberate beings. And then meanwhile, no, I cannot help you. No, I cannot do that. No. You don't have food. Well, why don't you go find a job? Oh, you have problems? Just grow up, No, here it actually says, some concrete images of, and some of them are really magnificent images. It says, like, just like the earth and space and all the mighty elements exist for the benefit of beings, may I also be that ground of life for everything. Antonio, if you have the pages, the translation of Bhamakara into Spanish, go ahead and share in the chat. I think the version from Casa Tibet, Mexico is based on the Sanskrit version of Bodhicharyavatara. So people are constantly confused and lost because those verses, their order and their content is slightly different from the Tibetan version. We are, so for everyone, we are working with the translation of the Tibetan version of the Bodhicharyavatara. In the Sanskrit version, there is some differences, shorter actually. Then in the Chinese translation, in the Chinese Buddhist canon, there's also a translation of this text. There's also slightly different from the Tibetan version. So we are using the Tibetan version. So here in these 5 verses, they're really beautiful. And if we can repeat this 5 verses as part of our bodhicitta commitment every day, then it doesn't leave, bodhicitta in the abstract realm of like, oh, may I achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. And then, it's like, no, I cannot help. No, I cannot help. No, I cannot help. No, I cannot help. No, I cannot do this. No, I cannot do that. So these 5 verses is good to incorporate in our daily reminders. So now let's take a 10-minute break. And when we come back, let's see if we have any questions, either from this class or from previous classes. We'll try to take some questions before we move on to the rest of this chapter. So let's take a short break.
Om Wage Jware Mum Wage Jware Mum 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 Om Wage Jware Mum Wage Jware 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 Om Wage Jware Mum Wage Jware
So let's see if there are any questions.
Dr. Lai, I have a question.
Yes.
And this is related to past teachings that I was reviewing on basically the 4 R's on chapter 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we review the the four powers there under that chapter. I mean, you mentioned that, you know, we apply the four powers so we could remove or purify negative karma, right? By removing the negative karma seeds, you know, that will future ripen. I used to think that, let's say those were going to be physically, I mean, they were going to physically be removed, I mean, disappeared. But then after hearing the teachings, I guess my question goes to those negative karma seeds will still ripen. I mean, they still will show up. However, us applying the four R's, let's say, will make us guide the mind to conceive those seeds, not probably as such negative as we would have in the past without applying the four R's. But now that we have that tool, that will help us relate to those situations. Is that kind of accurate?
Okay, sure. Let me rephrase the question. So the question is that so under the confession practice, purifying negative karma using the four powers, right? So Javier's question is that it seems to him now that his understanding now, based on the teachings that he's been attending, is that it's not so much saying that negative karma that has been created in the past can literally be done away with through the four powers, but that what the application of the four powers does is that when these negative karma do ripen, they are not experienced in such a terrible manner. And so Javier is asking, is that accurate to think like that? That the purification practice in general, and then specifically using the four powers, we should not think that they literally get rid of negative causes we have created in the past, but what they do is that they make us, in a way you could say, more prepared, and therefore will suffer less when these negative causes do ripen. And so that is the question, as I understand it.
Yes, correct. Thank you.
So what you have expressed is, I think, a good position to take out of being cautious. So it's good to take that position. But there are numerous examples given in the sutras where negative seeds, negative karma that has not ripened yet, so poetically we say still in the form of seeds, can be destroyed completely, so that they don't give rise, they don't ripen. So there are many examples like that as well. There are also many examples of whereby the seed aren't destroyed, but the seed is weakened, so that when they do sprout, they produce a very weak tree, a tree that maybe cannot produce further seeds for further negative karma. So there are also examples like that. But it's better to take that cautious position that you express in that question, so that we don't underestimate the power and the consequence of negative actions. So Buddha Shakyamuni's life, for example, gives us several incidences, occasions to see how powerful negative karma can be, so that even after he has achieved Buddha, it is said that the ripening of previous negative karma continued to arise. So that is Buddha Shakyamuni teaching us to be very, very, very cautious with negative karma. So it is said, for example, that there was a few occasions where he basically did not get food for the day, have to sleep, go to bed hungry, or was offered very bad food, like food for horses, horse feed. So then on that occasion, Buddha will talk about how in the previous lifetime, certain things, certain negative karma that he created, and there usually it will show that it was actually a very negative karma, but because of the power of his practice, because of power of purification, now it merely resulted in one night being hungry. And then the example of like that at one time also, like he was injured by a thorn, like a thorn like cut his toe and it was bleeding. And then again, this is about some very negative karma he created in a previous lifetime. But that if he wasn't now Buddha, this karma would ripen in a much, much, much more horrible way. But now it's only a thorn pierced his toe and he was bleeding. So Buddha Shakyamuni's life gives us examples that our take-home lesson should be, even though in principle, karmic seeds can be destroyed completely before they ripen. And for that matter, both good and negative karmic seeds can be destroyed. Yeah, everything is impermanent. But don't count on that I definitely can destroy them. So it's okay, if I create some negative karma. Don't take that attitude.
Dr. Lai, I cannot hear you.
Dr. Lai, we cannot hear you.
Oh, okay. Now?
Yes, yes.
Oh, good. I turned off my volume because I was singing. No, just kidding.
There's two questions in the chat room also.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
First question, how to purify in case of unintentionally negative action due to unavoidable situations? For example, an animal suddenly run across the road at night while driving.
How to purify is purify using the four powers that we've already talked about. So you need to go review there. Then also the question about unintentional, I think we also talked about that. That generally speaking, for a karma to be fully a full karma, like for an action to carry the weight of full karma, intention is necessary and important. So if your intention is not to kill or harm, and then an animal dashes out as you are driving, then it's killed or injured, there is karma, but it's not the karma of killing. There is karma in the sense of if you were more careful, if you were driving more carefully, more alert, maybe the accident will not happen. But basically, it's not the full karma of, say, you made a plan. Okay, I'm going to purposely drive around at night so that I will kill more things, then that's, you know, obviously very negative. Jasper?
Yeah, the second questions are all the okay, sorry. We can learn not to be upset by the emotional harm people may do us, but when they hit us is hard. Does this mean we must be willing to suffer to give out self-grasping?
Up to you, you know, whether you suffer or not. One time I said, you know, I don't know if I said it to this group, you know, whenever I go back to Malaysia to visit my parents, if I get time, I go to this Chinese massage place. Chinese massage is not relaxing. You know, don't think, oh, 1 hour, yay, you know, try to just get half an hour. Because if it's 1 hour, it's 1 hour of, you know, pain. Like really painful. You will come away with bruises on your body. So, because the concept there is like there are blockages, the tightness, and they have to undo the tightness by using a lot of pressure. In fact, there's even warning that if you don't get the right person, they can cause a mini stroke. I mean, it's that serious, okay? So I remember the first time when I went, because my family, even my family, they don't go to this kind of massage, you know, just this son who has lived in the West, you know, for too long, thinking, oh, go do some Chinese massage, you know. So the first time I went, you know, and it was really painful. So then when I came home and my family asked me, you know, so how did it go? I said, well, considering that I paid them money, I suppose it went well. Because if this has happened on the street, I would call the police and have this guy arrested. So it's a matter of perspective, you know. Even if you got hit, you know. Really, some of the great practitioners, when they get hit, like beaten, really, and they'll say, oh, thank you, you know, my negative karma for this has now been settled, cleared. Can you think like that, you know? Shantideva has more to say about this actually in chapter 6. So one equation for suffering, we use this word suffering a lot, suffering. So one American Buddhist teacher gave this equation. He says, pain multiplied by resistance equals suffering. So what that means is, yes, of course there's physical pain. But like I said, Shantideva in chapter 6 will have us consider, like why did that physical pain happen? You also need to think about that, he says. But anyway, in this equation, pain multiplied by resistance, that is suffering, equals suffering. So that is the suffering that the Buddha is primarily concerned about. Not just concerned about in the sense of concern, but that is the kind of suffering that he says you can completely remove. In a way, right, if we look at our bodies biologically, pain is actually part of, you could say, the wisdom of the body. There are actually some people who have this rare condition where they cannot feel pain. And actually it's very dangerous. You will bleed to death if you cannot feel pain. And certain forms of leprosy, for example, basically the patients lose certain forms of leprosy. You lose your sense of pain. So then your body, even fingers and this and that, can drop off because they have rotted away. Or if you are near fire, you get burned, you don't feel. So in a way, pain, is part of the body's defense system, a warning system. But when pain is met with resistance, resistance here means, you get angry, you get upset, you get sad, you get you want to blame people, you are resentful, you feel it's unjust, all those things, all those feelings, all that falls under resistance. So the more resistance you have, then the more suffering you will have. So good news is resistance can be reduced to zero.
Dr. Han, I have a questions.
Yeah,
I'm not
hold
sure
on a
whether
sec.
I know how to ask the
Hold on,
questions.
hold on. I'll let you know.
Okay, sure.
The translation is still going on. Okay, good. Go ahead. Jenny, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry for my confused questions. I know continue the karma topic. Karma actually ripen due to conditions, right?
Yes.
The condition because of our affiliated emotions or the non-virtuous.
You mean like, are those things conditions?
Yeah.
No. Our afflictive emotions are the causes.
And the non-virtuous, that is the conditions for the
No, non-virtues, all those are causes.
causes. Then
Yeah,
what about
conditions are talking about, you know, things that are not necessarily coming from us. Like conditions,
example?
like situations provided. So for example, you know, someone comes by to provoke you, that's a condition. Whether you want to respond or not, that's cause.
I see. Oh. Another question is, I don't really get Ken Chen's talking about emptiness is actually transcend. Hold on.
Transcend what?
Transcend causality.
Emptiness.
Causality actually is emptiness.
Yes. So not transcend. Emptiness and causality are two sides of the same coin.
Can you elaborate more?
Oh, no, not here.
Okay.
Eventually, we will come to that, but not right now.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Yeah. So the translators, you can just quickly just summarize what you heard. You know, so important point. This part is emptiness and causality, or emptiness and interdependent arising. And they are two sides of the same coin. One doesn't cancel out the other. In fact, without one, the other cannot happen. Because they are two sides of the same thing. Looked at from two, depending on where you're standing. So they necessarily, one cannot do without the other.
Thank you, Dr. Han.
Mm-hmm. So now we move on to verse 23, 24. Verse 23 and 24, they are the actual words that are used for giving rise to bodhicitta. So in fact, in bodhicitta transmission ceremonies, these two verses are very famous. They are used in these ceremonies as a way for the teacher to lead the students to this formal act of generating bodhicitta. So together, let's read this.
Dr. Lan, there's one more question in the chat room.
Yeah, it's okay. We don't have time. Yeah. Just as all the Buddhas of the past have brought forth the awakened mind, and in the precepts of the Bodhisattvas step by step abode and trained, likewise for the benefit of beings I will bring to birth the awakened mind, and in those precepts step by step I will abide and train myself. So these two. So these two verses are also repeated in many occasions, such as in Dugungagyu, like in the general opening prayers, the longer opening prayers, we also include these two verses, because this is like the most well-known, you could say, verses for formally expressing this aspiration of bodhicitta. So here, just as all the Buddhas of the past have brought forth this bodhicitta. So how did these Buddhas become Buddhas? They became Buddhas by first generating this awakened mind, generating bodhicitta. And the next two lines, and in the precepts of the Bodhisattva, step by step, they followed, they abide in. Likewise, I will do the same. So then, the first two lines is aspiration bodhicitta. The second two lines is action bodhicitta, engagement bodhicitta. So you're committing to both, committing to achieving the result of Buddha, of being awake, and committing to following the path. In brief, practicing the 6 paramitas. So verse 23 is to reminds us that the example of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas should be our reference point. And verse 24 says, then in the same way, I will do the same to generate both aspiration and engagement or action bodhicitta. So that's 23 and 24. And when we say, oh, I take refuge in the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the great Arhats, or we say, oh, meaning we say, oh, please, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, protect me. What is the real protection that they give? The real protection that they give is the example that they have given. That example that they have given, that we have to model, that we have to follow. So here, again, you know, these two verses are at the heart of most Tibetan ceremonies for generating bodhicitta. Then after generating bodhicitta, there are precepts for training, for enhancing this bodhicitta, for this bodhicitta to not decline. So then there's a set of do's and don'ts, so to say. There's a set of precepts that you should train and observe. So here, Shantideva doesn't give them, you know, explicitly. But he has another text, Shantideva, a more detailed text actually, called Shiksha Samuchaya, which means the compendium, meaning the collection for training. Shiksha, how to be a student, how to train. So the compendium, the collection of instructions for training on the path, this larger text that he also composed, there he goes into details of these precepts, these specific guidelines of do's and don'ts. Just for the sake of those who are familiar with the Chinese Buddhist tradition of taking the Bodhisattva vow, in the Chinese tradition of taking the Bodhisattva vow, the focus is on the actual taking of each of these precepts, which in the Chinese tradition, it has the 10 main major vows and 48 minor vows. And Shantideva actually addresses that in his Siksha Samuchaya. A slightly different, but more or less the same. But in the Chinese tradition, you know, when they show Pusa Jie, is show Pusa Jie, and they say receiving the Bodhisattva vows, it's actually, you know, each of the vows, the preceptor will repeat, like, this first vow, can you keep it or not? Then the part of the ritual you answer, yes, I can, and happily I will. Then this next vow, can you hold it or not? Yes, I can, and happily I will. And then go through one by one by one by one. In the Tibetan tradition, it's the ritual, the formal name is generating bodhicitta, fa xing, generating bodhicitta, and not so much, although after generating it, then you have to learn, you know, what the precepts are and observe the precepts. verses 25 to 34, that one is about rejoicing. The joy that you should feel after you have generated bodhicitta. Which we will look at that on Saturday, this section. It's really important to carry out the Bodhisattva resolve with joy. Without joy, it's not possible. You cannot reach the result of Buddhahood without being sustained by this joy. Briefly now, I'm looking at, I'm able to look at the chat. There are two follow-up questions. One says, are all the unfortunate things that happen to us a result of the ripening of negative karma we created in the past? Or are there some things that simply happen to us that has nothing to do with us? That's the first question. Second question, referring back to the animal that suddenly dash out and then gets killed, is this the ripening of the animal's karma? So these are the two questions which I will briefly answer together, but go ahead and translate the question. Regarding the first one, actually the different Buddhist traditions have slightly different positions. One Buddhist tradition says, no, not everything that you experience is the result of past karma, either negative or positive. They say there are things that just simply happens. There are some Buddhist traditions that say that. But mainly in the Mahayana tradition, it says, no, everything that happens to you, things that you label to be good and things that you label to be bad, they are the ripening of past good, virtuous or non-virtuous, skillful or non-skillful action. Now, the reason I would say why this second position is the one that I recommend is not so that you become paranoid with everything, but is so that you will take everything that happens in a way that you can have equanimity, as well as serving as a reminder to always choose the more skillful way to act. As often we say, when you understand karma, the teaching of karma well, you don't blame others. But we should also say, when you really understand how karma works, you also don't blame yourself. So don't on the account of saying, oh, all the things that are happening to me that is unpleasant right now, oh, it's all because I did them, so I blame myself. Actually, it's also not about blaming ourselves. Because in a way that, right, you also need to understand the past you that created that karma is not exactly the present you. Everything is always interdependently changing. Only if you have a very rigid view that, oh, 10 lifetimes ago, that's me. Now 10 lifetimes later, same me. That kind of like fixation. Then you can blame yourself, or you feel like you have to blame yourself, but it's not. You have to understand between past 10 lifetimes and now, you're connected, but everything is dynamic, which also tells us, the reason why we choose to see all that we experience now is the ripening of past karma is so that, so as a strategy, so that in the present, we remind ourselves to always, whenever possible, do our best to choose the skillful way of acting, the virtuous way of acting. The animal that accidentally gets killed because you're driving and it's dark and you can't see and you did not intend to drive around to kill animals, is it the animal's karma that they suffered that? Yes, it is. But it's not your business. You cannot be the judge to determine, oh, it is their karma, therefore it should happen. If you extend that, then you can just close down all hospitals, close down all charity, because you say, oh, this is all their karma, They're supposed to suffer COVID. They're supposed to suffer hunger. It's their karma. No, this is not our business. Our business is to respond with skillful actions, respond with kindness, looking for all and every opportunity to do that which is virtuous. We do not say, oh, this is their karma, this is not their karma, this is right, this is wrong. No, in fact, we cannot see the full implications of karma. Karma, the general principles of karma we can know. The intricate details of how things unfold, only Buddhists can see that. In fact, of the two obscurations, we say, Buddha said that there are two types of obscurations that prevent us from becoming Buddhists. The first type of obscuration is the obscuration of afflictive emotions, which is related to, or which arises from self-grasping. That is the first type of obscuration. That obscuration is overcome at the stage of the 8th Bodhisattva Bhumi. The second obscuration, it's a more subtle obscuration, and those are the obscurations that prevent us from seeing the complete workings and details of karma. And that obscuration is not overcome until the 10th Bodhisattva Bhumi. So you see, between the two, the second obscuration is only like overcome at the level of Buddhas. The afflictive emotion obscurations at the 8th Bhumi, they are purified, they are cleansed. So Buddha says, general principles of karma, cause and effect, I have already taught you, I have shown you, I have also told specifically, these things you do, these things you don't do. He says, you follow that. You follow that. If you try to think more than that, he says, your head would explode. And so far, I don't think literally that has happened. So, but you get the point. Between our current capacity and the ideal of how Buddhas and great Bodhisattvas act, there's always a big gap. It is not skillful to look at the gap and feel depressed or discouraged. Rather, we should recognize the gap and then when we see other people acting in ways that shows that gap, we can be kinder to them and not judge them. Because we see that for me, someone who has even taken the Bodhisattva vow, still there's such a big gap. Then when we look at others who might not even have exposure to Dharma, and there's a big gap, we don't judge them, we don't blame them. In fact, we can be kinder. So that's how we relate to the teachings. skillfully. Gampopa says, if you don't practice the Dharma skillfully, then even something as precious as the Dharma, which is what you practice to free yourself from suffering, can lead to the lower realms. Okay, so today we're going to conclude here, and let's dedicate this merit with the Bodhicitta dedication. Chanchu sem choren poje ma ge ba nam ge gyurji ge ba nyam ba me ba yang gong ne gong du be wer shu. I'll see everyone on Saturday. Goodbye, goodbye, good night, good night.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Lai.
Gracias. Gracias. Gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Gracias.
you, Dr. Lai.
Gracias. Thank you.